We're covering everything that you need to know in talent experience.
People applying for new positions is like the cherry on top.
With the technology to attract talent.
Recruiters always know their best talent.
The AI just learned to use that information.
Inclusion efforts across the organization.
Tell me what it's like to work through associate story.
Interviews with leaders in the industry. Talk about what's new in HR tech. What are the hot topics? We're here every week, folks. Weekly look at the latest and greatest topics in HR. Hey everyone, welcome to Talent Experience Live. As I like to say, it's a bold statement, but this is the greatest show on the internets at 12 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. You'll be hard pressed to find a better show on the internet at this time and place. This is the place to be every week if you are a recruiter, a sourcer, a talent marketer, or a talent manager. If you're just joining us, we go live every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. Be sure to like, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell so you get notified. We want to make sure you never miss a beat. We love being here. We wouldn't be here without you, right? So if you didn't show up, we probably wouldn't show up. So thank you so much. We really appreciate, your participation, your time, your attention. It means the world to us. I'm your host, Tom Tate. I'm on the marketing team here at Phenom. We have a co-host today, a longtime host of Talent Experience Live. Devin Foster is joining us. Devin, welcome.
Thank you. I have to be here, Tom. This is must-watch every single Thursday, like you mentioned, and I join at any point that I can.
Yeah, and it's so great. We co-hosted a couple weeks ago, and it was so much fun having you back in the co-hosting seats. I guess we can announce now. So I'm going to be stepping back a little bit for the remainder of the summer. Devin's going to take over in the main hot seat, right? So I'm going to be popping in. I'm going to be viewing, but Devin is going to help kind of keep the light. Keep the candle burning for the remainder of the summer. Keep things hot. Keep things going strong. So, Devin, I appreciate that, and we're super excited for the episodes to come.
Yeah, no, I got big shoes to fill, so I am excited. And any pointers or tips that you have for me, feel free to share them.
Devin, I filled your shoes, so now we're just swapping shoes, right? So, first, we were both wearing the shoes, then you wore them, then I wore them. Maybe it's time for both of us to get a new pair of shoes, but really appreciate it. For all those who are not familiar with Phenom, our purpose is to help 1 billion people find the right job. I didn't misspeak. It's a true billion with a B. We are well on our way. Can't do it without our amazing community and our amazing customers. So thank you for that as well. We do it with a talent experience platform, Phenom TXM, and Phenom TXM helps candidates find the right fit faster. It helps employees evolve in their current role and beyond. It helps recruiters achieve some of that next level productivity and efficiency. It helps managers build better teams with data analytics and automation. And all of this is powered by super slick artificial intelligence and machine learning. So if you want to learn anything about this, right? If you want to have a conversation about this, as I like to say, we love to geek out over all things talent acquisition, talent management, artificial intelligence. Head on over to phenom.com. Let us know that you're interested. And we'd love to start that conversation. Shout out to everyone in the chat today. Let me know who you are, where you're from, what you do. Talent Experience Live is a great place to connect with each other. This is a good opportunity to meet some of your peers. I always like to see, if you're looking for something, if you're looking to learn, if you're looking for a mentor, if you're looking for a peer that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, this is a great place to start to build some of those relationships and connections. So shout out, let me know who you are in the chat. You could also shout out in the chat today's icebreaker question. I'm going to throw it over to Devin first. So our colleague, Bambi, posted a really great LinkedIn message. It was a Spotify playlist. And it was, if Spotify playlists was a cold email, and the title of every song on the playlist kind of strung together a funny email. So it was like, hey, Jude, I hope you're doing okay. My name is Billie Jean, Feel Good Inc. You want college? Me too. And it just kind of like went through, and it was really, really funny. And it got me thinking, it's going to be a holiday weekend. A lot of people are going to be hanging out, playing some music. So I was curious, Devin, what's on your playlist these days? Any new music, any new tunes that you've been checking out lately?
Tom, before I answer that, you buried the lead on that playlist. My favorite part is the last song, which is Unsubscribe.
Yes, I love it.
Coming from a recruitment background in sales, when somebody just sends back unsubscribe, it might be one of the most heartbreaking emails you can get. But to answer your question, I have been listening to a lot of Harry Styles. His new album, Harry's House, probably doesn't need any promotion, but I will do it anyway. I bought it on vinyl. We toss it on in the mornings while I'm getting my daughter ready for school, and also sometimes at dinner. So that has been what I'm listening to. How about you? What have you been listening to?
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate that. I like Harry Styles as well. Earlier this week, I saw Big Time Rush in concert. Big Time Rush is a 2010s boy band that started out on a Nickelodeon show. So it's my younger sister's 18th birthday, and she was never at a formal concert. So we all went to see Big Time Rush. Before that, I've never heard a Big Time Rush song, so it was fun to hear some new music. But I've been listening to Corey Wong, who is a rhythm guitar player, and he just does some incredible instrumental, kind of like funk, like jazzy music. It's been really good just to put on while I'm working and just kind of around the house. Kids love it. Keeps the positivity, the summer vibes going. So shout out in the chat. Let us know what music we should be checking out. And we'll get started with today's episode. So there is a lot going on in the news today, right? There's so much going on. I think it's hard to keep up. And, a lot of it is very heavy, right? Hard to process, right? But one thing that I think we've all been watching very closely is the rate of hiring, right? The rate of hiring, the rate of unemployment, and the potential for a recession, right? So I think, why are we doing this? Because of all these external factors, we know that it can have a huge impact on what we do in talent acquisition and talent management. And it's important for us to keep our finger on the pulse so that we can successfully respond and communicate with candidates and employees effectively. Devin, I'm sure you've seen a lot on LinkedIn, around this, and different companies, laying folks off and kind of struggling with it.
Yeah, lot of hot takes all over the internet around this topic. And as someone who is very close to talent acquisition, what does that mean, right? At the end of the day, how do you change if you are slowing down with your recruiting? How do you keep your pipeline full for when the floodgates open back up? So I know it's an exciting topic today, Tom, and I know we have a special guest as well.
Yeah, we are not the right people to be
No.
fielding this topic, right? I'm not a recruiter. Devin, you have a little bit of background, right? But we figured, hey, we need to bring in the absolute best person to talk about this topic. So we are so excited to explore this topic with Nancy Gray-Starkebaum, who is the VP of Client Value Realization as of Tuesday here at Phenom. As of Monday, she was the VP of Global Talent Acquisition, and she just has such a wealth of experience. She's going to drop some knowledge for us. So without any further ado, let's bring on Nancy.
Nancy, welcome.
Hey, Devin, great to be here. Great to see you guys.
Awesome. We are excited to have you on the program today and share with us your wealth of knowledge that you have around this topic. But before we get into it, we always love to hear, I know the promotion just happened on Tuesday, Tom announced, so congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit about your current role and also what you were doing before that made the transition so great?
The current role is of the role on Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah. So client value realization is all about taking everything that we do at Phenom within our platform and starting to really understand how our clients are generating efficiency, effectiveness, time savings, and really getting value for all of the great things that they can do on the platform. And we've done some of this work, but there's so much more to do, especially as we as recruiters become more sophisticated in our approach to metrics and analytics. And, definitely in a slowdown, you want to make sure you can show the return on investment for your organization.
Now, obviously, to take that transition and really advise our customer, you have to have a wealth of knowledge from talent acquisition and from your experience. And I know Tom mentioned, previously you've worked in VP of talent acquisition here at Phenom, also elsewhere. So our favorite question that we always ask on this show is, how did you get into HR and talent acquisition? Was it something that when you were a little girl, you grew up and said, I really want to recruit people for XYZ company? Or was it something that kind of just fell into your lap and the match was perfect?
Yeah, I originally wanted to be a track coach. My undergrad is in physical education or kinesiology. And, there weren't any jobs that I really wanted to do out of that program. So I went and got an MBA and kind of fell into the people side of business. and really developed a passion for recruiting about halfway through my career. Well, maybe not halfway given the age I'm at now, but I spent the first part of my career, in the HR business partner side, and got introduced to recruiting and absolutely fell in love with it as the fun, creative side of HR, where you could really make an impact in people's lives by matching them with that perfect position that would allow them to grow and prosper. So I've never, I've dipped in and out of it a little bit, but it is truly my first love from a business perspective.
That's awesome. And I love the background in track, because in talent acquisition, there is so much running around back and forth.
Yeah.
Open position over here. We need to hire this position. So perhaps it got you, in the right shape for that mindset of switching topics so quick. Speaking of topics, Tom, I know we have a big one today, so I'll hand the floor over to you.
Yeah, definitely. And before we jump into that topic, Nancy, I can't let you get away without answering the icebreaker question. So any new music or anything that you've been listening to lately?
So my family would tell you that I don't really do new music.
Sure. Yep.
I grew up in the era that I grew up in. I listened to a lot of old stuff, but one of my favorite bands is the Tragically Hip, which is a iconic Canadian band, and it is Canada Day tomorrow here north of the US border. So I will be listening to some Tragically Hip and a few other smaller Canadian, lesser known bands.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Thank you. So, when we think about today's topic, right, really helping recruiters and talent acquisition teams get into a new mindset and energize themselves, through what might feel like a period of a slowdown, recession comes to mind, right? And you're seeing that in the headlines. We're here in the US. Devin and I are here in the US. We've seen a lot of different recessions over the past couple decades, right? For me personally, I graduated college. This will age me, but I graduated college right before the housing bubble burst, right? So it was really hard for me to find work when I got out of college. It was a really interesting time to try to enter the workforce. And that was one of the last slowdowns that I remember. And then, of course, when COVID hit, we had an immediate slowdown, which picked up. And now we're entering this pre-recession period again. All signs kind of point to some potential trouble. So we want to talk about actionable tips and tactics that recruiters and talent acquisition teams can consider when there might be a slowdown. Now, recession is not the only thing, right, that could cause a slowdown. Talent acquisition teams are faced with this, even during prosperous times, right, good times. So what are some other causes that you've seen in your career that might cause slowdowns, in the hiring process?
Yeah, and there are all kinds of different reasons for slowdowns. I mean, we're coming up to the biggest one in North America right now and most parts of Europe, which is summer.
Sure.
Right. There's very little hiring that traditionally goes on in summer because candidates are on vacation, hiring managers are on vacation, and kids are out of school. And so most people are not focused on changing jobs, career things. They do that at different times of the year, but the summer is just almost always slow all around. If you're doing seasonal hiring to get ready for the summer, that's done by now. If you're doing seasonal hiring to get ready for Christmas or the holidays in the winter, that hasn't started yet.
Sure.
So summer's slow. That period in North America between the middle of December and the middle of January is another time that is traditionally slow. Budgeting, right? Budgets get set, and then there's this hold during the end of the year as companies understand what their numbers are going to look like and decide whether they're going to release headcount or not. That's another typically slow time. And there can be factors that are particular to an industry or your own business. If you are merging, being acquired, buying somebody else, or you're thinking about changing your strategy, those can all create a significant slowdown in talent acquisition.
So if you want to be an agile and resilient recruiter or agile and resilient talent acquisition team, it's important to start to understand and adapt, to these periods, and I think if you're new to talent acquisition and you're starting to experience this for the first time in a big way with a potential recession, there's a good opportunity to really sharpen the saw, right? And get those skills and kind of soft skills in place. So I was curious, we're going to talk a lot about actionable, really tactical things that you can do, but is there a mindset shift that has to happen first? For that eager, super hyperactive recruiter to start to step back and say, hey, things are slowing down. What do I do now?
Oh, 100%. especially when you have a team that's been running full tilt, carrying 20, 30, 40 requisitions even. They are used to go. They're used to screening 5 to 10 candidates a day, connecting with hiring managers. It's like when you leave a company and take a period of time off, right? You have to come down from that. So that mind shift set goes from my value is by being busy and being on the phone all the time, to my value comes from starting to think strategically about what can I do better? What can I put in place in order to make things go smoother or faster or be more efficient when things pick up? And what are things that I've always wanted to do, but I've just been too busy to do it? So there's a lot of things that leaders can do to help their teams make that shift. And part of it is helping them to understand, that there's a whole lot of valuable things to be done that don't necessarily have to do with filling jobs. And that's a huge shift, because recruiters are a lot like salespeople in a lot of way, right? They want to the hunt, they want to close the deal, they want to land the candidate. And, there's a real feeling of satisfaction you get when that happens. And so in a slowdown, you don't get as much of that, but you have to find satisfaction in other things.
That makes complete sense. Now, you mentioned the go atmosphere, right? And recruiters may not have a complete time block of interviews coming up and things like that, but there are other activities. You mentioned shifting that mindset. What are some of those activities that they can focus on where if the slowdown turns into a speed up maybe, or just the floodgates open where people need to be hired again? What can they do to prepare themselves for that without potentially interviewing candidates and having them there?
Yeah, so I like to break it up into two things. One is what I call hygiene and maintenance, and the other thing is preparing for the future. And so those hygiene and maintenance things really come down to evaluating the systems and the tools and the technology that you have and how you've set them up. Are they working for you as best they can? If you have a 50-step hiring process that's in a swim lane document, it's a great time to evaluate and say to yourself, wow, the 50 steps, is that what we should be doing? Or should we think differently and allow recruiters to have more creativity? Or do we not have enough steps for our process and our industry and our business? So I think taking a look at some of those basic tools and just stepping back and saying, how is this work? Getting some feedback from your teams is important. That's part of the hygiene maintenance. We can dig into that more. I think the other piece is preparing for the future is, my entire career, we've talked about building talent pipelines. And in times when recruiting is heavy, talent pipelines look like basically sending emails to like candidates, telling them about jobs. But in a slowdown, there's a real craft that has to come into play. And this is really, to me, the art of recruiting, where you have to step back and segment those pipelines further so that there's some connectivity between the individuals in that pipeline. And then think about how you're going to engage, nurture, and connect with them in a really meaningful way when you might not be having a job to send to them. In fact, I would argue that in a slowdown, that's the wrong thing to do. Instead, what you might want to think about is, how do I connect them with the thought leadership that's going on inside my company? Because almost every company will have thought leaders in particular skills or spaces. And how do you connect them? By having those thought leaders write blogs, something like this, where they're doing a video or they're at a conference presenting. How do you share that material appropriately with people who would really gravitate to it and who it would be of interest? I had an example where ISO has a series of HR metrics that they're thinking of setting up as a standard. Well, they've set it up as a standard, but the SEC is thinking about implementing those metrics for publicly traded companies as an HR standard. Very few people in my world know about this, but what a gift if someone sent that to me in an email campaign and said, hey, this isn't related to joining our company or to a job, but as a professional, I thought you might be interested in knowing this. So there's a lot of different ways to connect with talent pools, and it's a great chance to use our creativity now.
It's super interesting because when you think of recruitment, you think of talent acquisition, the call to action is always apply or get hired or whatever it may be. So you almost want to turn that off, right? It is what you're saying, because you don't want to give someone false hope. Now, you mentioned hygiene as well as nurturing there a little bit. I want to pose this question to you. Is it possible to potentially do both, where you have a candidate that may have left you at the altar, right? Accepted another position, to check in with them, 2, 3 months after they had gone through the interview process and say, hey, how are things going, right? How's the new role? I don't have anything for you right now, but when things go, I wanted to see if you're happy or, what you liked about that organization so that I can be better at my job. Are those conversations encouraged, where they can clean up some of the data that you mentioned, if somebody may have updated a phone number or email or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're doing something at Phenom where we're starting to implement, because we are, the summer, everything is slowing down in the summer, of course, is sort of a 10 by 20, where we're looking at our 20 most critical roles and then looking at who are the 10 people that we would love to have joined the company in those areas with those skill sets. And it becomes not a quantity exercise, but a real quality exercise. And so part of nurturing those silver medalist candidates is really critical and important. And I think that candidates always appreciate when they've had a great recruiter experience, when that recruiter just reaches out to check in on them. I mean, there's something, kind of altruistic and really just nice and generous about giving a little bit of your time to that person that you spent, quite a bit of energy connecting and engaging in your brand. And I think it's a brilliant thing to do, at this time. And that's when you can present to the business those deep talent pipelines and be able to really articulate why those candidates or prospects are in those pipelines. I think that's where, one of the key ways to become a trusted talent acquisition advisor or partner.
Yeah, I love this theme too. We explored this pretty extensively with Luba, our colleague Luba, on a previous episode, and we'll have to find the link and put that in the notes here so people can check that out. We're always interested in facilitating the transformation of the recruiter from being kind of the deli ticket taker, take your ticket, let me know what your order is, and I'll go fulfill your order, to really becoming the trusted talent advisor. So this idea that you mentioned of seeking out thought leadership at your organization, seeking out content that is meaningful, that is valuable, and sharing that proactively with candidates as a way to kind of build pipeline and nurture is really exciting to me. Now, if a recruiter doesn't know where to get that content, right? So maybe this is another mindset shift, right? So I'm curious, Nancy, what would you encourage a recruiter to do, or what kind of behaviors do you think they can start adopting to, again, build up that wealth of knowledge, right? And build relationships, so that they can start to know what to send and know how to do that, because it might be a shift. It might be a huge change for someone who's just used to kind of the transactional conversations of recruiting.
Yeah, it is a shift. It's definitely a mindset shift,
Yeah.
And we see that with our customers, as they're learning to use our platform and our campaign tools. I think, one of the first things to do is to talk to those people who are experts in your organization within that talent pool and just ask them, like, what would you love? What could a recruiter or somebody like me send you that you would find interesting, that would cause you to open and engage with the material? And we've got great examples of some best practices, around things like newsletters that have, different things for different people. If you're engaging with finance, senior finance executives, for instance, might be interested in things about your company if you're releasing your management circular, or if you've got your investor call, simple links to that, right? And keep in mind that those messages should be short and sweet, because they're probably not going to read more than a couple of sentences, but that's valuable information to them, right? So they don't have to go and search it. You're just sending them a link. For somebody who is a new grad or relatively new in the workforce, corporate social responsibility is huge. So what can you send them about your corporate social responsibility, your employee resource groups, or interesting dynamics that are shifting in the workplace from a general culture and values? I mean, right now, the return to work is a really big topic for a lot of people, and especially, I think, for early talent. I mean, for all of us, but early talent is really thinking about where do they want to live and work, because they have all kinds of flexibility in choosing where they want to be.
Yeah.
And so there's the go and get the expert opinion, but then talk to people within your organization who are representative of that pipeline of talent that you want to nurture, and get their perspective. And then I always think just be creative, right? Make people laugh. I love the idea of giving social currency in any email campaign, because we all look for social currency even when we're working at home to share at the dinner table, or when we're, sitting around after dinner, whatever. You want that funny, humorous thing that you learned. So if you can share a piece of social currency that's relevant to your industry, to the pipeline, and there are so many factoids out there that are fun. And I just think that connecting with candidates should be fun and energizing, and, a little bit of give and take.
Yeah, we've got a great affirmation from Eric here. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. Very good info on nurturing. Appreciate it. Eric, I'm curious, what you've done in the past for nurturing too. Feel free to chime in the comments here. Love the idea of social currency, right? Deposits and withdrawals. And if you're not making actionable deposits, you're likely making withdrawals, or you're just completely stagnant, right? So super important to think about it that way. So I love that you were able to put it that way. Talent acquisition leaders, managers, people who are running these teams, right, and trying to lead these teams through slowdowns and through challenging times. You've mentioned earlier that, the impetus for a recruiter to get up in the morning might be a set of metrics that are no longer relevant. So is it important for leaders to think about putting new metrics in place, or recalibrating with the team to say that, hey, we're shifting, and success rate on this email campaign is going to look different, and that's okay. Do you recommend leaders having those conversations to kind of guide the team?
Oh, 100%. And I think that the more you can engage the team, especially if your business is slowing down for whatever reason, recession, economy, seasonality, whatever, engaging the team and thinking through how you measure value and what different things look like, and experimenting in a slower time is a really great thing to do. So part of understanding what resonates with your pipeline is measuring those experiments. And to your point, seeing what campaigns resonate and why, and then really digging into not the surface level of the why, but digging into really understanding why one type of campaign might resonate with a tech group, and why it might not resonate with your distribution center employees, so that you're starting to build those best practices that make sense for your organization, your talent pools, and your industry. And I think that's a really great time. The other thing is, if a recruiter is generally measured by filling a number of recs, and you're slowing down right now because, or time to fill, and that your time to fill is going to take longer because candidates are on vacation and hiring managers are on vacation, then moving away from those metrics and starting to, maybe break the team up into projects to do some of that hygiene and maintenance work. We have, for example, in our Phenom platform, we have a plethora of tags. We have over 3,000. Most of those tags have never been used, and they're legacy from our particular tenant having been used for demos. So the team is going to clean those up now, because we only need probably about 100. But I think, even when I my last big corporate gig, we had what we called e-questions. And I remember sitting down and looking at all of the e-questions we had. And we had over 5,000 for a team of, about 25 recruiters. And there were more than 100 questions around how to ask for compensation, because we had so many questions that instead of finding the right one, somebody would just make up a new one. It would be, what's your annual salary? How much do you make annually? Right. Yeah. And so everybody will have that stuff in their system that needs to be cleaned up. And this is a really great time to do it. And the more you clean up and, get the system efficient, the more effective and efficient your recruiters will be in turn.
That makes a ton of sense. One thing you mentioned specifically was making deposit into social currencies, right? And thought popped into my head. Is there any value to a recruiter or somebody on the talent acquisition team creating thought leadership content for candidates, right? Best tips for video interviews, what fonts to stay away from on your resume. Comic Sans is a big no-no in my book. Other companies may have a different opinion, but sharing some of that content where you offer value as opposed to, just, hey, this is what we're doing. Because I think a combination of both could really grow your talent pool, where people are coming to your content and trying to learn, right, and better themselves, even if it isn't at your organization. Have you seen something like that be successful?
Yeah, and that's a really awesome point, right? Is what can you do for your candidates? So there are, one of the things that recruiting teams excel at is interviewing, and they really can, provide value to candidates in having them understand what are great interview questions and what aren't. And I do a lot of, I have a lot of people who come to me. I mean, I'm the HR person for my entire extended family, and they always want to know how to practice or prep for an interview. And I think that's a gift that recruiters can give to your talent pools. At Phenom, we've done it in the past where we've had events where, and we did it for students, where they could learn some of our best practices around preparing for interviews, right? And I think that, not only interviews, but resume writing, cover letters are something that people are always asking about, how to write a good cover letter. So anything that your team can do to connect and, show off the culture of your company by interacting with candidates in a way that might not necessarily result in a role or position today, but will result in opportunities down the road, I think is an amazing thing to do. And this is the right time to do it.
You mentioned show off your company culture. Are there internal activities that recruiters can do to showcase that? Maybe it's create user-generated content for a day in the life or something like that, or what someone's home office looks like if you're hiring remotely or something like that. Is that something that is encouraged? And also, when you're creating that externally facing content, should you run it through certain channels to make sure that it's on brand, that you're not saying that something potentially the organization isn't behind or doesn't represent your company in a certain way? What do those look like, and how do recruiters avoid some of those pitfalls?
Yeah, another brilliant idea, Devin. And I think that user-generated content, candidates love it because it's genuine, right? And we are all used to YouTube videos, and I swear that my son, almost everything he's learned by watching YouTube videos, including how to do extensive car maintenance on his vehicle. So we are always looking for things that are genuine, and we're very suspicious of glossy corporate generated content when it comes to culture, right? We're looking for those behind the scenes insights into how employees live their lives working for your organization. So having competitions for photos, that's really simple, right? Show us what you're doing this summer. Having a landing page on your career site where you can showcase different seasonal events and activities, right? We just went through Pride Month. Being able to showcase Pride Month photos that have been generated and taken by your employees participating in Pride activities is amazing, because it really gets to the heart of your company and how you are diverse and inclusive. So you can do competitions. You can ask them, to do videos and small vignettes of how they love their job, or how they resonate with your values and culture. I always think that running that through marketing is a great idea if you've got a supportive marketing organization like we do here at Phenom, because marketers are the brand guardians, and talent acquisition should also be brand guardians, but they can teach your recruiting team really how to speak in the voice of your organization as well, which I think is important. So there are so many activities that can be done both internally and externally to set yourselves up for just being a better recruiting machine in the future. And we should take advantage of that while we're in if you're in a slowdown, or while you're in a slowdown, or if you have extra headcount.
That makes complete sense. And one thing that you mentioned there was career site, right? Is that something that you could potentially use during this downtime? Is updating it and maybe posting some of that not as glossy content? I know marketers will lose their heads if we say, hey, you can just post the cell phone video onto the career site. But is that something that you can take time and look at? You mentioned seasonality, showcasing the seasons throughout, or a what's happening here sort of page where you can get that genuine concept and also keep candidates up to date there. You recommend that?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only, updating your career site, because I think that's really important. Your career site should really be a living a living space where the content changes frequently and is fresh. I think candidates are really looking for that. And you want them to return to your career site often to really engage with your culture and make the right decision for them if they're going to be interested in joining your organization. But here at Phenom, we actually have a new career site that we've been working on. We're just waiting to launch it. But throwing up things like landing pages to explain parts of your recruiting process, that's a great way to engage with candidates. To showcase a particular geographic region, country, a new office, a new line of business, to showcase some of the leadership, and allow candidates to feel like they're interacting one-on-one with them through video capture, video content, articles, blog posts, anything like that, I think is really amazing. And especially if you can measure it. So at Phenom, we can measure through our analytics tool, time on page, exits and bounce rates and things like that, that will, again, as you experiment with content, really help to focus you on what resonates with your talent pool and the people who are attracted to your organization. And I think that's amazing. And so often we're so busy, we just don't have time to do that. So embrace those things now.
Yeah, find a way, right? When you have the time to really dive deeper. And all of that too will continue to build on this idea of becoming a talent advisor, right? Not just a recruiter. You are a talent advisor, and you're able to point to specific landing pages and point to the analytics and data behind it and say, hey, this is resonating. This is actually doing the job that we needed to do. Megan chimed in and said she's never heard of social currency, but she loves the idea, always looking for a way for the brand to positively engage with the audience, right? And I think that social currency and this idea of engaging with the audience has never been more critical. When you think about the way that candidates and the way that employees are engaging with brands today at that level, it is so public, right? And it's happening in real time, and it's happening every single day, right? So when we think about, you just said, hey, take time to update the career site, critical, because the career site is kind of a window into the culture of the organization. It is how candidates get a clear view. But the other window is just scrolling through LinkedIn and seeing what people are saying about your brand and your company and decisions that they're making. So quickly when there are layoffs, news outlets will report on the layoffs, employees will have their own hot takes, and you're just seeing all that unfold. We also have so many things happening just in terms of brands engaging with things that are happening socially and politically, right? This is no longer is this relegated to just Facebook, where friends and family are talking about their opinions. Everyone is looking to see, what does this organization stand for? What does this organization stand for? And depending upon that answer, it really will determine whether or not a candidate or employee wants to continue that relationship. So recruiters now have this role, right, that they might not have had before, where they need to be kind of a spokesperson for that as well, right? And a voice for that, and be able to connect on that level. So Nancy, how should a recruiter navigate this? Should they be having the hard conversations? Should they be avoiding the hard conversations? What do you think on this whole topic?
Yeah, and this is a big one. The LinkedIn posts over the last week and a half have been fascinating, and I've been glued to them, just reading them, and so many things going on for so many people, globally. And I think that recruiters are often the front line of how future talent is feeling about what's happening in the world. And it's important that they feel like they can bring that back into the organization and get the support they need. And generally that will come from marketing or a PR organization. So, if you feel like you need to respond, I always believe that you go to marketing and say, I need some talking points for this. Because especially right now, I think what you say and how you say it is critical. And you have to be as transparent as you can be, but as genuine as you can be. And if your organization doesn't have a response or an answer to something that's happening politically or socially, I think that's okay. But you need the talking point on how to share that, because some organizations respond very quickly and other organizations spend a lot of time figuring out their, from a long-term perspective, how they can support different initiatives or how they want to respond. And a lot of it has to do with the internal workings of your organization, right? I've worked at companies where it would take a year to craft a response because they were very conservative, had a brand that they wanted to protect, things like that. And there were a lot of layers and levels that you had to go through to respond to world events. Other organizations can respond on a dime, it seems. So understanding your organization, making sure you're not personally frustrated by a quick response or a lack of response, and then working with your marketing organization to get those talking points that you can use both in verbal conversations and in written material, I think is really critical. And marketing and recruiting should have a really deep, tight partnership.
How do you feel about communication from a recruiter to a candidate? Moving away from kind of the social and political issues, but thinking about as we move closer to a potential recession, 1 week you might have all these open recs, right? And things are looking great. And then the next week, you hear from HR that, a certain piece of the organization had to lay off 20%, right? And then all of a sudden you're cutting back on those open recs. You had people in the process, maybe people had 2 or 3 interviews already. How do we communicate when we're kind of moving through that uncertainty without upsetting people that were in the process, but we don't want to let them go because the role might still be open, but we're really not sure kind of what the future holds.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that recruiters need to do is really manage the expectations of candidates. And at one of my previous roles, I had executive recruiting. And executive recruiting is all about providing that white glove service. And what happens with executive recruiting is you're recruiting leaders for other leaders, and their schedules are incredibly busy and ever changing. And so a process that you think, and you might agree, might take 4 to 6 weeks can take 3 to 4 months because of schedules and demands on busy executives, both on the candidate side and the hiring leader side. And so you really learn in that role to connect often, frequently, updates, manage expectations. And I think that needs to happen as well with candidates that everyone has. I mean, it's super hard when you have a high volume role and you're managing maybe 100 candidates. But I think, you can use things like automations with your technology to share messaging around, what is going on. And everybody understands that business decisions happen. Things happen that are out of our control. And, the best thing that you can do as a recruiter is be as transparent as you can. I don't mind wasting my time going through an interview process. If I'm getting updates that says, this is going to take longer, so-and-so is on vacation for 2 weeks, so we won't have any updates for 2.5 weeks. That's fine. If the role has changed or gone away, it's good to share that with a candidate and just say, we are right now reevaluating some of our hiring because of some changes that are going on with the business. So just bear with us. I'll keep you updated. The worst thing a recruiter can do is have somebody come in for interviews and then not get back to them. Right. And I can't tell you, from time to time, I like to interview because I like to see what's, what the experience is like, what's happening, kind of as a benchmark for our own internal process. And there's nothing worse than never hearing back, right? We're so quick to reach out on LinkedIn and through other means to gather candidates in and connect with them and have those initial conversations. And then, often because of how busy recruiters are, things fall by the wayside. So we have tools and automations that help us engage with candidates in a way that takes, a nanosecond instead of 20 minutes. So we leverage those tools ourselves, and it really makes a difference to your candidate experience. But transparency, I think, is being as transparent as you can is key.
Do you think you have to be very forward about perks too, and just general working environment stuff? Because I'm thinking about a certain CEO who I won't name, who said that, hey, if you don't come back to the office for 40 hours a week, you're no longer allowed to work remotely, and you're no longer allowed to, you shouldn't be working here. And that's a huge shift, right? So if you were a recruiter at said company and you were saying, yeah, 80% of our workforce is working remote, and you can too. I don't know if 80% is the right number, but you can too. And then all of a sudden that happens, shortly after that person gets hired. They were hired off of false pretenses, so do you feel like, but you also don't want to scare an employee, right? Or a candidate, so how is there a line to be drawn there?
Yeah, the world is changing right now in so many different fronts, and we have all kinds of companies who are trying to figure out,
Yes.
what is this new way of working. And especially, I got to tell you, especially in the summer, I have a friend who works at a very large bank, who for the first time in a very long career had been able to spend the last 2 summers working at their cottage remotely, and actually spent the 2 summers with their family, being able to leave work and walk into the water at the beach and really enjoy the summer. And now is back at work in a large city. And that's really hard. And especially when you've been able to do your job remotely. So I always think that as a recruiter, you can speak to your experience and what it's like for you and how you value the culture. And then I think you can talk to, sort of that larger experience, because nothing is black and white in our world today, right? There are all kinds of different things. And here at Phenom, we have people who are going back into the office. And I think that we have people who are grateful to be able to go back into an office all the time. And then there are people who, don't want to be in the office more than a day or 2 a week. And we need to give each other grace as we work through what is this new world like. Especially, I think of the price of gas. I used to commute 150 kilometers one way for a job that I loved. Right? That took anywhere from 2 to 4 hours one way. I did that for 4.5 years. With the price of gas today, that would be significantly impacting my lifestyle if I still had to do that. So I think that you can share what's happening today with candidates, and you can talk about what you understand may be happening. But I think that, letting candidates know that you don't have a policy nailed down yet, or that things are shifting and that we try to accommodate. I think those are different things that you can use. I mean, it is as clear as mud right now what the work life is going to look like in the next 12 months globally.
Yep. Globally.
Right? I don't think anybody's really figured that out. I feel like we're all in phase 2 of the pandemic experiment right now, right? Phase 1 was just getting through the first 2 years. And now phase 2 is, what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah. Earlier, Nancy said that she was going to try her best not to swear on air. And I saw just the struggle is real. I saw this. It was almost there. It was almost there. We almost got it out of Nancy, but she did a great job keeping this PG-13 today. So thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that.
Thanks,
and yeah, we're figuring it out. I mean, here in Pennsylvania, there was a company based out of Pittsburgh who said, hey, if you're going to roll back human rights in the state, we're going to have to reconsider our headquarters, and like, that's a real thing, that's happening. And I think that there's ripple effects, to everything that's happening, whether it's social, political issues, whether it is human rights issues, whether it is a recession, economic issues. We are dealing, with ripple effects, that are not absolutes. To your point, there is no black and white. To all my Star Wars fans out there, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Okay, only a Sith deals in absolutes. So, Devin, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, excuse me. I did have one last question before we wrap things up, Nancy. We talked about becoming talent advisors instead of just going through the process and things. When these hiccups come about, how important is it for recruiters to talk to someone on the phone or virtually rather than sending an email for maybe somebody who is at the final stage? We talk so frequently about the fear of candidates ghosting or something like that. How important is it to have those in a human way as opposed to just sending out maybe an absolute black and white email that says, hey, we're not hiring anymore, sorry? And could you tell us a little bit about that and how to navigate that conversation?
Yeah, so you know what, that's a really tough one, Devin, because right now, I don't know about you, but I get probably 10, 20 calls a week that are from, I don't know, robots that, it's not English. they're crank, not what we would have called them crank calls when we were kids, but they're, phishing calls, whatever. And so if I don't recognize a number, I don't pick it up. Right. So we're dealing with that. And it's really hard for me to say this because, if you talk to one of my previous teams, I was so frustrated with them not picking up the phone and talking to candidates that I took them on a field trip, and we went in the subway system in Toronto, and I made them speak to strangers and gather information about them, because I think that's a really great, and they still talk about it and hate me for it. But I think it's a really important skill for recruiters to have, that ability to cold call. But now we have to balance that with the fact that people aren't comfortable picking up cold calls because of all the nefarious things that happen via the phone these days. If you've got a relationship, then I think absolutely, if you've talked to a candidate in person, absolutely setting up time to speak to them and talk to them is really important, especially because that human connection, after all, is what candidates are looking for when they decide to join an organization. I think, though, that that for the most part, people are very cautious about who they spend time speaking to. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm sure you guys are the same, but most of my day is spent on Zoom calls. I don't even call my friends at night. I'm exhausted by talking. So I think you have to be respectful. I think text messaging is fine. We're all used to it. It's quick and short and simple. I don't know how many people listen to voicemails these days. I never listen to voicemail. So you really need to think about what's the right way to reach this person. And if it's somebody who enjoyed speaking on the phone, speak to them. If it's somebody who wants that quick, short, and sweet text message, then text them. But I think personalization is really important. And we need to explore the ways that technology can help us deliver that personalized experience on a daily basis for both our candidates and our hiring managers.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I completely understand. I have gotten a robocall since we've been on the show. So I understand. Any final thoughts, Nancy? Anything that you'd like to wrap up with or leave the viewers with?
Yeah, if you're a recruiter, and you're in a slowdown right now, first of all, take care of yourself. Take that vacation that you've been putting off. Take Friday afternoon off to go join your family at the beach or whatever it is that you do. But look after yourself, because we know that recruiting can be a crazy world. And then I think look for those ways that you've always dreamed of to add value to the business and start acting on them, whether it's getting deep knowledge about your talent pool, or thinking about metrics and how you can share them with the business, reevaluating all of your hiring processes, or just going back and looking at what worked well, what didn't work well, and what can I improve. There's so much work that we can do when we have the gift of time.
That's awesome. Well, Nancy, you should take all of tomorrow off, not just the afternoon. I know it's a Canadian holiday, so I hope you enjoy yourself. Tom, anything you'd like to add?
No, Nancy, just thank you so much. This has been an educational, but also a really fun and great episode to talk about something that's challenging. So it's great that we can do this. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having you guys, and happy July 4th as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. What an awesome episode, Devin.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned a ton. We are definitely lucky to have experts here at Phenom who can come on and just take us to school with these things. Because obviously, if you and I just spent the past 50 minutes talking about this, we wouldn't get anywhere near as close to dropping some of that knowledge. So any key takeaways for you?
No, I loved it. I love the transparency, almost a little bit of homework for recruiters. I know from my experience in talking with recruiters, it's easy to get in the weeds and have your CRM look like a complete disaster, have half jumbled notes on Notepad. So organizing that, I think, was a huge takeaway for me. And then building those relationships internally on what to say and what not to say externally to candidates, I think, is so important. How about for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really, I'm a mindset guy. So really, the bias for action, I really took away from this, right? Is even if you're a recruiter, you have to know where your energy comes from. And if your energy comes from filling roles and talking to candidates, that's going to shift, right? And if you could recognize that that's going to shift, and to Nancy's final point of taking some time to step back and understand, there are areas where you can provide real value to the organization and move things forward in a real positive way. It's going to be different. But it's an opportunity for you as a recruiter to take action. So have that bias for action. And if you do, as you start to do that, incrementally, you will transform. You will become that talent advisor. You will have insights, you will have data, you will have thought leadership pieces. You will become such a better recruiter when things pick up. You know, when things pick up and those roles start coming in, you'll be much better off, you know, knowing that you spent that time really sharpening your saw and kind of getting to where you want it to be. So yeah, fantastic episode. I just want to give a shout out to Eric, who chimed into the chat a bunch, Megan as well, Ananya, our Pete. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for your time and attendance. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you also being here. You know, I'm not going to lie. We look at the numbers. We look at the numbers and see how many people tune in. And we are just kind of shocked that you continue to show up. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Devin, hope you have a great holiday weekend, although I'm sure I'll see you on Zoom about 6 times between now and then. But yeah, thanks for joining me today, Devin. Thanks to all of our listeners today. Really appreciate it. If you caught us midway, hit the rewind button, you know, go back to the beginning. A lot of actionable stuff in here. And we will catch you on the next one.